What would you do if you discovered something impossible living inside your own body? Something that defied every law of medicine and physics, yet was undeniably real. Today, I'm going to tell you about Eleanor Ashworth, a woman who in 1973 made a discovery so disturbing that the medical community tried to bury her case entirely. They failed. Eleanor was 34 years old when she first heard it. A soft, rhythmic ticking coming from somewhere inside her chest. Not her heartbeat, which she knew intimately after years of anxiety attacks. This was different, mechanical, precise, and it was getting louder. At first, she thought she was losing her mind. The ticking would start randomly throughout the day, sometimes lasting minutes, sometimes hours. She could feel it vibrating against her ribs from the inside. When she pressed her ear to her chest, the sound was unmistakable. Tick, 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 like a grandfather clock, but faster, much faster. Her husband, Richard, thought she was having another nervous breakdown. Eleanor had always been what people politely called high-strung. She'd spent time in psychiatric facilities twice before, once after the death of their first child, and again following a severe car accident that left her with chronic pain. So when she began insisting there was a clock inside her chest, Richard scheduled an appointment with Dr. Margaret Chen, a cardiologist at Boston General Hospital. Dr. Chen had seen thousands of patients complaining of chest pains, irregular heartbeats, and phantom sounds. She expected to find anxiety, perhaps a minor arrhythmia. What she found instead would haunt her for the rest of her career. During the initial examination, Dr. Chen placed her stethoscope against Eleanor's chest and immediately froze. Beneath the normal loop-dub of Eleanor's heart, she could hear it. Clearly, a mechanical ticking, perfectly synchronized, coming from somewhere near the left ventricle. She moved the stethoscope around Eleanor's chest, and the ticking followed a specific pattern. Strongest near the heart but audible across the entire torso. Dr. Chen ordered every test imaginable. X-rays showed nothing unusual. EKGs revealed a perfectly healthy heart rhythm. But the ticking persisted, and now multiple medical professionals could hear it. Nurses would find excuses to listen to Eleanor's chest. Word spread through the hospital like wildfire. The breakthrough came during an experimental echocardiogram using newly developed ultrasound technology. Dr. James Morrison, a specialist in cardiac imaging, was brought in to examine Eleanor's case. What appeared on his monitor should have been impossible there. Nestled between Eleanor's heart and left lung was a structure that shouldn't exist. It appeared metallic on the ultrasound, roughly the size of a pocket watch, with what looked like intricate mechanical components inside, gears, springs, and at its center, two hands moving in reverse, counting backward through time. Dr. Morrison ran the tests 17 times. Each time, the results were identical. There was a functioning timepiece inside Eleanor Ashworth's chest, and it was counting backward at exactly twice the speed of normal time. But here's where the story becomes truly terrifying. Eleanor claimed she could read the clock. She said it currently showed 11 hours, 43 minutes, and 27 seconds, and it was counting down. The medical team was divided. Half wanted to operate immediately to remove this impossible object before it caused unknown damage to Eleanor's heart. The other half, led by Dr. Chen, argued for observation. The object wasn't interfering with Eleanor's cardiac function. Her vital signs were normal, and honestly, none of them had any idea how to safely remove something that appeared to be partially fused with her cardiac tissue. Eleanor herself was adamant. The clock must not be removed. She claimed to have memories that weren't her own, visions of the future that hadn't happened yet, and an absolute certainty about what would occur when the countdown reached 0. She began making predictions. Small things at first. She told Dr. Morrison his wife would call at exactly 3:47 p.m. to tell him their cat had been hit by a blue sedan. She told nurse Patricia Williams that she would find a $20 bill in her coat pocket, even though Patricia was certain she'd checked those pockets that morning. She told Dr. Chen that her estranged brother would call within 48 hours to reconcile after 15 years of silence. Every prediction came true. Exactly as Eleanor described. The medical team documented everything meticulously. Eleanor's case file grew to over 800 pages. Photographs, ultrasounds, audio recordings of the ticking, detailed logs of her predictions and their outcomes. They were witnessing something that challenged every fundamental principle of medicine and physics, and they knew it. As weeks passed, Eleanor's behavior became increasingly erratic. She would stare at walls for hours, claiming to see events from decades in the future or the distant past. She spoke of wars that hadn't been fought, technologies that hadn't been invented, people who hadn't been born. But scattered among these seemingly impossible visions were details that proved disturbingly accurate when verified years later. The ticking grew louder. Nurses reported being able to hear it from across the room. Eleanor claimed the countdown had reached 9 hours, 15 minutes, and 33 seconds. She became obsessed with warning people about something she called the convergence, insisting that when the clock reached zero, time itself would fracture, and past, present, and future would collapse into a single terrible moment. The medical team faced an impossible choice. Eleanor's physical health remained perfect, but her mental state was deteriorating rapidly. She claimed the clock was showing her visions of her own death, over and over, each time different but always connected to the moment the countdown would end. Dr. Chen made the decision to attempt surgical removal. The operation was scheduled for December 15, 1973. Eleanor's countdown, according to her calculations, would reach zero on December 14 at 11:15 p.m. The night before the surgery, Eleanor disappeared. She left behind a letter, written in handwriting that changed styles throughout, as if different people had taken turns writing it. The letter contained detailed instructions for her funeral, the location of money she'd hidden throughout her house, and goodbye messages to family members she hadn't spoken to in years. It also contained a warning. The letter stated that the clock inside her chest wasn't counting down to her death. It was counting down to her birth. She claimed that she existed in temporal loops, living her life backward and forward simultaneously, and that the clock was the only thing keeping her anchored to linear time. She wrote that she had to disappear before the countdown reached zero, or the temporal paradox would spread to everyone who had been exposed to the ticking dot. Eleanor Ashworth was never found. Her car was discovered abandoned at the edge of Walden Pond, but her body was never recovered. The water was searched for weeks. Every hospital, morgue, and psychiatric facility in the region was contacted. She had simply vanished. But the story doesn't end there. Dr. Chen kept Eleanor's case file for decades. Even after retiring from medicine, she continued to research temporal anomalies, quantum physics, and theoretical cardiology until her death in 2007. In her personal notes, discovered after her passing, she documented something extraordinary. On December 14, 1973, at exactly 11:59 p.m., every clock in Boston General Hospital stopped for exactly 60 seconds. Security cameras showed the same 60 seconds of footage repeating in an endless loop. Staff members reported experiencing the strangest sensation of living the same minute over and over, aware that time had somehow become stuck before everything returned to normal at exactly midnight. Dr. Chen spent 34 years trying to explain what happened to Eleanor Ashworth. In her final notes, she wrote, "I believe Eleanor was telling the truth about everything. The clock, the visions, the countdown, the convergence. I believe she found a way to step outside of linear time entirely, and that somewhere, in some impossible space between seconds, she's still there, still counting backward, still trying to warn us about something we're not ready to understand." There are those who claim Eleanor's story is still unfolding. Urban legends speak of people who hear ticking sounds in their chests during moments of extreme stress or near-death experiences. Online forums are filled with accounts of individuals who claim to see brief flashes of the past or future, always accompanied by the sound of a clock ticking in reverse. Medical professionals occasionally report cases similar to phantom sounds inside patients' bodies, impossible objects showing up on scans, people making predictions with disturbing accuracy. These cases are typically classified as psychological phenomena, filed away, and forgotten. But Dr. Chan's research suggests something far more unsettling. In her final interview, conducted just months before her death, she stated, "Time isn't linear, it's not even cyclical, it's crystalline, with infinite facets reflecting infinite possibilities." Eleanor didn't have a clock inside her chest. She had become a clock, marking time in directions we can't even perceive. And I believe she's still out there, still counting, still warning us about what happens when all the clocks in all the chests finally reach zero. The Eleanor Ashworth case remains one of the most thoroughly documented medical mysteries of the 20th century. 800 pages of evidence that something impossible occurred in a Boston hospital 50 years ago. Evidence that suggests our understanding of time, consciousness, and the human body is far more limited than we dare to admit. So tonight, when you're lying in bed, listen carefully to the sounds inside your chest. Your heartbeat, your breathing, the rush of blood through your veins. And if you hear something else, something mechanical and precise, something counting backward through time itself, remember Eleanor Ashworth. Remember that some mysteries are too dangerous to solve, and some countdowns are too terrible to let reach zero. Because, according to Eleanor's final letter, she wasn't the only one. She was just the first one brave enough to listen to what time was trying to tell her. And somewhere, in the space between heartbeats, her clock is still ticking, still counting backward, still marking time until the moment when all our individual countdowns sync up and the convergence finally begins. The question isn't whether Eleanor Ashworth's story is true. The question is whether you're prepared for what happens when you start hearing the ticking in your own chest and realize that your personal countdown has already begun. Sleep well.